They're the quiet masterminds. The architects of worlds that only exist inside their heads. The ones who can see a dozen moves ahead in the game of life, yet somehow forget to eat lunch. INTPs are brilliant, curious, and endlessly inventive, but behind that genius lies a shadow most people never see. It's the part that second-guesses every decision. The side that disappears for days, lost in thought, while the world keeps spinning without them. It's the inner critic that whispers, "What if you're wrong?" until they've analyzed themselves into paralysis. And that's just the beginning. Because when the INTP's mind turns dark, it's not loud or messy, it's subtle, cold, and quietly devastating. So, what happens when the most analytical personality type becomes their own worst enemy? If you're ready to explore the untold side of the INTP mind, stick around. This one's going to be eye-opening. And hey, if you enjoy deep dives into personality psychology, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Let's jump right in. The INTP mind is a strange, fascinating paradox. On one hand, it's a playground of ideas, a place where theories, possibilities, and what-if scenarios dance endlessly. On the other, it's a minefield of hesitation, self-doubt, and mental loops that never seem to end. An INTP can see patterns others miss. They can dismantle a problem down to its smallest component and rebuild it into something entirely new. But that same brilliance can turn inward, dissecting their own choices until nothing feels safe to act on. It's like having a supercomputer for a brain, with a tendency to run in circles. And here's the twist: they know they're capable of greatness, but that awareness is double-edged. It fuels ambition, but it also breeds fear. If I mess this up, it proves I'm not as capable as I thought. This paradox creates a silent tension in their lives. To the outside world, they seem calm, logical, and maybe a little aloof. Inside? It's a storm of possibility versus paralysis, curiosity versus caution. And it's this inner tug-of-war that often sets the stage for the darker sides of the INTP personality to emerge. For an INTP, every decision is a puzzle. And puzzles aren't meant to be rushed. They'll turn it over, examine every angle, test every possible scenario in their mind, until hours, days, or even months have passed without a single action. It's not that they're lazy. In fact, their mental effort is enormous. But their need for complete certainty is a trap. Life rarely offers perfect information, and the INTP's refusal to move without it can leave them stuck in limbo. Imagine standing at a crossroads with 100 possible paths. The average person picks one and adjusts along the way. The INTP? They're still there, diagramming all the possible outcomes, calculating risk versus reward, wondering if the weather on path 57 will be slightly more favorable than path 12. The cruel irony? While they're frozen in thought, the opportunity itself may pass. And when it does, the INTP's sharp mind will turn against them. If only I had acted sooner. This cycle, think, overthink, miss the moment, regret, repeat, is one of the most exhausting and self-defeating patterns they face. And yet, in their eyes, they're just being thorough. To an INTP, emotions can feel slippery, unpredictable, illogical. And because they value precision and clarity, they often keep feelings, their own and others, at arm's length. It's not that they don't have emotions. Far from it. In fact, many INTPs feel deeply. But they're more comfortable dissecting feelings like a case study than experiencing them in real time. When a friend opens up about heartbreak, the INTP might instinctively search for a cause and effect explanation instead of offering comfort. This detachment can protect them from being overwhelmed. Yet it also builds invisible walls. Loved ones may misinterpret their calmness as coldness, their rationality as indifference. And the INTP, puzzled by the reaction, retreats even further. Over time, this emotional distance can leave them isolated, not because they don't care, but because they struggle to show that they do. Worse still, when an INTP suppresses their own feelings for too long, those emotions don't disappear. They collect quietly, like water behind a dam. And when that dam breaks, the resulting flood can be surprising, even to the INTP themselves. For an INTP, good enough rarely feels, well, good enough. If they can imagine a better version of something, they'll chase it, sometimes endlessly. A simple project can spiral into weeks of revisions because there's always another angle to explore, another detail to refine. What starts as a spark of inspiration becomes a marathon with no finish line. The work may be 95% complete, but to the INTP, that missing 5% looms like a glaring flaw. This perfectionism can be a source of pride, it pushes them to produce exceptional results. But it's also a silent saboteur. Deadlines slip. Opportunities vanish. And ironically, the pursuit of perfection often leaves them with nothing to show for their effort. Deep down, this drive isn't just about quality. It's about fear that releasing something imperfect will expose them as less capable than they seem. So they polish, tweak, and delay until the momentum fades. And when it does, the INTP is left with a half-finished masterpiece and a gnawing sense of frustration. Because in their mind, if it can't be perfect, maybe it's better not to do it at all. Solitude is oxygen for an INTP's mind. It's in the quiet, away from distractions, that they can dive deep into thought and explore their mental worlds without interruption. But there's a fine line between healthy alone time and the kind of isolation that slowly erodes well-being. At first, withdrawing feels like self-care. They shut the door, open a book, tinker with an idea, or disappear into a research rabbit hole. Hours turn into days, and before long, the outside world feels optional. Socializing starts to feel draining, even burdensome. The problem? The longer they stay in this bubble, the harder it becomes to leave. Human connection feels rusty, small talk unbearable, and the noise of everyday life overwhelming. Meanwhile, loneliness creeps in quietly. They may tell themselves they're fine, after all, they've got their ideas for company, but something essential is missing. Relationships weaken. Opportunities pass unnoticed. And by the time they realize they need connection again, it can feel like starting from scratch. The spiral has done its work, and climbing out requires more energy than they thought they had. For an INTP, procrastination isn't just a bad habit, it's practically an art form. Not the lazy kind, but the sophisticated, highly strategic kind that disguises itself as productive distraction. They'll tell themselves they're researching before starting a project, but that research might spiral into 3 days of reading tangential articles, watching obscure documentaries, or exploring entirely unrelated concepts. On paper, they've been busy. In reality, the main task hasn't moved an inch. This loop has a predictable rhythm: delay, guilt, renewed determination, followed by yet another delay. The INTP brain justifies it with logic: I'm gathering more data, or I'll do it better later. But the truth is, they're often avoiding the discomfort of actually committing to a decision or facing the possibility of failure. And the worst part? When the deadline finally looms, they can pull off brilliant, last-minute results. That reinforces the cycle. They think, see, I work best under pressure. But the cost is high: stress, lost sleep, and the quiet knowledge that the work could have been better if started earlier. It's a loop they know well, but breaking it is another puzzle entirely. Every INTP starts with curiosity, a childlike wonder about how things work and why people think the way they do. But over time, that curiosity can morph into something darker, cynicism. It usually begins subtly. They notice patterns in human behavior, especially the repetitive mistakes people make. They see the same flawed arguments resurface, the same societal trends loop back around. After a while, it's tempting to believe there's nothing new under the sun, just recycled errors in a slightly different package. And with that realization comes a shift. Where they once asked, "Why?" with genuine excitement, they now ask it with a raised eyebrow. Optimism feels naive. Trust feels risky. They start assuming the worst, not because they want to, but because experience seems to prove it's safer. The danger here is that cynicism can masquerade as wisdom. The INTP might feel they're just being realistic, but in truth, it's a filter that colors everything gray. New opportunities look suspicious. People seem predictable. And that spark of wonder that once defined them begins to fade. Left unchecked, cynicism doesn't just protect them from disappointment, it walls them off from joy. For all their insight into systems, theories, and abstract concepts, INTPs can be surprisingly unaware of the subtleties in their own relationships. They're often so focused on what's being said that they miss how it's being said, the tone, the body language, the quiet emotional cues that carry more meaning than the words themselves. It's not that they don't care, it's that their attention naturally gravitates toward logic over nuance. If a partner says, "I'm fine," in a clearly not fine voice, the INTP might take the words at face value and move on, not realizing they've just stepped over an emotional tripwire. This blind spot can create misunderstandings. Loved ones may feel unseen or unheard, while the INTP feels baffled. "If you wanted me to know, why didn't you just say it?" Add to this their tendency to disappear into their own heads, and relationships can start to feel one-sided. Without intentional effort, they risk becoming the mysterious figure who's physically present but emotionally distant. And while their independence is one of their strengths, it's also the very thing that can quietly erode intimacy, unless they learn to step outside their mental world and tune into the human one. An INTP's mind rarely rests. Even during downtime, they're running simulations, dissecting ideas, or mentally leaping between unrelated concepts just to see where they land. It's exhilarating, until it's not. Burnout for an INTP often arrives quietly. There's no dramatic crash at first, just a gradual draining of motivation. Projects that once lit them up feel heavy. Reading feels like work. Even thinking, their favorite pastime, starts to feel exhausting. But when the collapse comes, it's sudden. They may withdraw completely, ignoring messages, skipping responsibilities, and abandoning ongoing work without explanation. It's not rebellion, it's a total systems shutdown. Their mind demands a hard reset, and the only way to get it is through rest, or complete disengagement. The danger is that INTPs often don't see burnout coming. They push through mental fatigue, assuming they can think their way out of it, only to find themselves mentally flatlined. And in that state, even simple tasks feel impossible. Getting back up isn't about finding motivation, it's about slowly rebuilding the mental energy they've been burning through for months. The good news? An INTP's shadow isn't permanent. Just as quickly as their mind can spiral into doubt or isolation, it can also rediscover wonder. The key is stepping out of the endless mental loop and reconnecting with the world beyond thought. Sometimes that means starting small, finishing a project without chasing perfection, saying yes to an invitation even if it disrupts their routine, or sharing an idea before it feels ready. Each action reminds them that progress matters more than flawless execution. It also means seeking balance. An INTP thrives when they have both solitude and connection, theory and experience. Deliberately stepping into situations that challenge their comfort zone helps them break the patterns that feed their shadow. And perhaps most importantly, they learn to see their traits not as flaws to fix, but as tools to refine. Their curiosity can rebuild optimism. Their logic can guide them out of emotional ruts. When they embrace both sides of themselves, the light and the dark, they stop fighting their nature and start using it. And that's when the INTP becomes unstoppable, not in spite of their shadow, but because they've learned to work with it.